Having written and produced over 400 songs in Logic, it's fair to say I've learned a few things. Some of these things are going to dramatically improve your music, and there are others that you should just totally avoid unless you want to be stuck at that beginner stage. By the way, if you want to fast track your learning in Logic, just go to makeyourmusic.co or check out that link in the description. Okay, so what is the first thing that I learned that's not really ever talked about? Well, it works like this. A few years back, I broke my shoulder and I had to have surgery. Now imagine you as the surgeon having to operate on my shoulder. Now imagine you were blind. You still go ahead with doing the surgery and you end up patching me together, but I'm really not happy with the result because you're blind and you would be much better if you had your eyesight. A problem a lot of beginners are making in Logic is they're producing blindly and not fully understanding how their music is being translated through their speakers. So what does this mean? It means that without you knowing, your room plays tricks on you and you can end up making terribly wrong mistakes if you don't have some sort of acoustic treatment. So is it like that bad? Well, what usually happens is if you don't have any acoustic treatment is you end up hearing a lot of unnecessary bass sounds, and therefore you could end up turning down the bass in your song. You're blind to the fact that your bass is actually just fine, but you think it's loud because your room makes it loud. For instance, here's an EQ snapshot of what my room sounded like in my first home studio. This is what my room in the first studio I had looked like. So these are the frequencies, and you can see everything below 100 hertz here is being dipped. So that's actually happening. The room is dipping that, and then it's actually increasing sound in this range. So to calibrate this, which I'm going to explain a bit, an EQ spectrum analyzer can actually reverse this. So these are common problem areas that might be happening in your room as well. So how do you stop this from happening? I'm going to show you a few different options now. Number one is to treat your room. You can do this on the cheap or with more expensive options too. There's a lot of good DIY videos if you go that route. The key problem areas though in any home studio room are going to be the corners of your room. Number two is you can use a spectrum analyzer on your stereo out channel that will use software to fix your room. For instance, it's just going to analyze like the sound and how it bounces around in your room, and then it's just going to try to fix it. Something like this. So back to this spectrum analyzer, how you get this chart in the first place is you actually have to go around your room with a microphone that the product provides. This is the product sound ID reference from SonarWorks, and you calibrate your room with this microphone. Now you end up with something like this, which is, probably close to being the result, but of course there's human error involved there when you're calibrating your own room. Anyways, it gives a good judgment to how the sound is in your room, and basically the plugin lives on your stereo out channel like this, and will just make a calibration which is basically the mirror opposite, which looks like this. If I put the calibration on, it just kind of reverts the shape. So it's going to actually boost those sounds in this range and decrease the sounds in this range all the way across the whole entire spectrum. So you have a target, which is a flat response. So you're actually hearing what's exactly happening with the music. Number three, this would be the cheapest option, which is just to listen to your track in other environments, like your car, headphones, laptop, a friend's good studio. And does it sound bad there? Does it sound good? Does it sound different? What is different? Maybe you realize in these environments that something could be fixed or changed. So the next piece of advice could actually take years off your learning, and it's honestly something I wish I started sooner. Have you ever reached a plateau in Logic or your music, for example? Like it's sounding good, but it's just not good enough. And you know that. I was in the same position, stuck and frustrated until I started doing this. I reached out to some different experienced producers, actually one on LinkedIn and a couple on Instagram for some help, but I had really specific things that I was looking to do. I told them I wanted to produce the song myself, but have them make it better. I also told them I wanted to actually go into their studio and sit with them and just completely bombard them with questions that popped up in my head. And essentially, they are producing your production. The things I learned in these sessions were so invaluable that I still do so many of these practices today. It's honestly so valuable. So how can you do this on your own? Step one, get together one or two songs that you've produced to a point, but you're not sure where to go. The point here is you've definitely produced it to a point where you've pushed your skill set to the absolute most limit. Step 2, reach out to your local studio, or you could also try people online and ask them if they'd be interested in doing the same thing, working on your song and producing your production. You can also reach out to our community or me at Make Your Music. Step 3 is when you actually make contact with someone, be clear that you would like this to be a hybrid session of production and learning. Not all studios will be interested in this kind of like teaching relationship, so it's best to be clear of that up front. Step 4, document your day in the studio with notes and then reintroduce all your learnings into your next song. Okay, so the next piece of advice is going to help you become a complete master at choosing and understanding sound selection, which is very, very important. Let's say you didn't know anything about nutrition. What would happen if you just ate like burgers, pasta, and chips? Kind of sounds pretty nice, but honestly, what would happen to you? Obviously, you'd probably feel pretty bad and gross and just unhealthy, right? But what if there was this other category of food that made you feel good and energetic and made you look good too? A big problem a lot of beginners face when they're just starting out in Logic is they aren't actually sure that there is a good category of food out there and what food they should be selecting, and they're often going for those chips and burgers and pasta. So what are your options for sound in Logic? Well, you have a ton of free sounds in Logic. There's the instrument library and the Apple Loops library as like good starting points. The sounds here are good, but they're also free, right? And so there's a lot of bad ones. So you need to filter through a lot of the fast food here to find the good stuff. So because of this, because of all this filtering, I would recommend just going straight for some good nutrition and good sounds by doing the following. Number 1 is to invest in a good drum library for your drum sounds, which are so important. A couple of good options for drums you could look into are Native Instruments, Splice, or Addictive Drums. Number 2 is play more sounds yourself. Obviously, huge caveat here, if you don't know how to play the instruments or play the sounds, then the sounds are going to be good. But if you're a good guitar player or piano player, or you play the instrument well, record yourself because you can capture that magic. Oftentimes when you want to create something like as an artist truly authentic, it's going to require you to create the sounds yourself. Let's take an example of a song that I recently produced where I didn't use any samples or libraries. It's just all recorded sound that I did in this room. For some reason, the song I'm about to show, it just feels better to me than virtual sounds. And that could be a psychological thing. I'm not sure if that would carry to the listener, but at the end of the day, I don't really care because I'm the creator and artist and it feels good to me. You've kept us on ice while I've been slipping by. You've kept us in line every day and every night. So remember, Logic won't make your songs sound good. It is only a tool or means to an end. If I put liquid cheese in your car, it would not operate properly, but kind of want to try that. This moves on to the next piece of advice, which is going to level up this one even more, but will also help you shape the sounds to have them sound way better. There are 3 holy grail plugins that you've heard, but you might really not know how they work. When I first started producing in Logic, I had no idea what I was doing with EQ, compression, or reverb. But after I got a base level grasp of these plugins, it really improved my songs and, more important, my confidence. Let's take an example. Here's an earlier song I was producing. Take a look at the EQ curve on this vocal.
Well, I can't say where I've gone wrong.
If you have any idea how to use EQ, you're going to notice that I was actually making the vocal sound worse. I was doing a disservice to the vocal. In reality, the EQ curve should have looked more like this.
Well, I can't say where I've gone wrong.
So where should you start learning how to use these 3 plugins, right? The short answer is trial and error. I mean, that's how I did it. Just add them and start using them. You're going to make mistakes at the beginning, but slowly you will get better. The long answer involves 2 important points. Point 1, start with presets to see what Logic suggests and then edit from there. But learning what they're doing in the first place is a good starting point. Point 2, in most cases, less is more. If you're going to start with nothing, this is a good rule of thumb to just rely on first. Your focus should be on the quality of the recording. You shouldn't have to rely on the plugins like EQ, compression, and reverb to change the sound too much. Use the plugin to help bring out more value from your sound, but not change the sound entirely. As a producer, don't feel like you have to get into the super technical nitty-gritty details of the plugin. Like, that's not your job as a producer. That would be for mixing. So if that's not your job, then what is your job? Imagine you were an amazing guitar player. Would you spend hours and weeks learning the piano to start recording your song? Or would you just start recording the guitar because you're really good at that thing? The problem is a lot of us are actually learning or doing things that we shouldn't be learning. So what could some of these things be? So remember, you don't have to do everything yourself. If you want to go for it, sure, go for it. But you should also consider to play to your strengths and get help on the rest. For example, I'm a good songwriter and producer, but I understand there are better mixers than myself, which is why I prefer to hire out my mixes and my masters too. I also understand that there's better producers and songwriters than me too, which is why I do a lot of collaborations. My strength, though, and what I like to think, is the production and songwriting side, not the mixing side. I had tried to do that for a long time, but once I let that go, it just freed up a giant room in my brain to focus on more creative things. Okay, let's get tactical for a second and talk about the next piece of advice, which is going to help you get much more comfortable moving around in Logic. I wish someone told me this first when I started. Get to know the grid in Logic. What is the grid? It works like this. Imagine you're cooking a meal in an entirely new kitchen. You don't know where anything is. You can't get anything done, right? And it's a hurdle for a lot of us when we're beginning in Logic because we just don't spend the time getting to know how to work the kitchen. In this case, our grid in Logic is super important. So how do you get really good at understanding and knowing the grid in Logic? The grid here is this space in Logic where all your sounds are going to take place. It's essential to really get comfortable moving around in this area. If I was starting all over again, I'd learn these 3 movements first. The first tool is learning how to cut with scissors. I like to have it as the 3rd click tool, and you can get that tool by going to, very quickly now, Logic Pro General Editing, I believe, and say, where is it? Right mouse button is assignable to a tool if you want this as your right click. So it's such a fundamental tool to quickly cut things. If I know my chorus is here and I want to cut the regions before it, I can just right click. I don't have to move my playhead over. I can just easily right click and those can be gone. It's such a fundamental tool. That's why I have it as the right mouse button, so it can be done so easily. Number 2, understanding snap regions and moving audio files. So I would definitely have this on to smart unless you are doing some specific things within these bar beats divisions kind of thing. I like it usually as smart. That means Logic is just being smart enough to snap my region into place where it thinks it's going. So what does this mean? Let's say I'm moving these hats around, this hat region. Well, Logic is going to help us understand, okay, where do you actually want to drag it to? So if I'm dragging it to, let's say, bar 28, I'm going to click and drag it. So as I'm dragging over to bar 28, it's going to snap to bar 28. I'm slowly moving it over there so you can see. And there it just snapped. So if this was off, and now because it's snapped, I know for a fact that it's resting on bar 28, and I can zoom in deeply to see that it is really on the grid. If I didn't have that in place, if this was off, then there would be no snap region. I could end up doing something like this. I might drag it over and, I might think it's close, but I might let go. And watch as I zoom in now, it's not on the grid. So, it could have been also over here. And so if you don't know where you're dragging things, that could be dangerous because things might not show up in time. Number 3 is learning how to quickly zoom in and zoom out. Use the Option key on your keyboard. So Option, and make a square around whatever you want to zoom in on. So let's go over here to the outro of these guitars, and I can go deeper making squares. And then if I want to go back out, I hold Option and just click wherever you are with your mouse, and you're going to zoom out. Number 4 is learning how to quantize audio and MIDI to have it quickly locked in place. With MIDI, so if you're recording MIDI and you're working in the editor, understanding that you can do shortcut tools like selecting all the MIDI in your piano roll editor. So selecting all your MIDI, now this MIDI isn't quantized, but as an example, I can select all my MIDI and quantize by a specific note, or I can actually just press Q, the key command Q. So if I just unfreeze this track, you'll see what I mean. Unfreeze this piano here. So I can highlight everything and just press Q. Now I'm quantizing by 1/16th note at 100% strength. So going even further, I can like quickly record, if I duplicate this piano and record some more piano on this chorus, all I have to do is do Command A to highlight all the MIDI and then press Q to quantize. The alternative to that is to clicking the region and going over to region up here and then quantizing it by up here. So quantizing it by, 16th note or an 8th note, whatever, and doing the strength as well, which is down. If I turn quantize on, you'll see here these Q values light up, so I can do the strength. And once you build more movements and shortcuts into your workflow, you're going to be like cooking Michelin style meals in no time. Maybe not. The next piece of advice might be super pessimistic and you might hate me for it, but it's important for you to hear. The good news is though that this is the biggest thing you can do to create better productions. A few years ago, I had 2 students learning Logic. The first student was very detail oriented and maybe somewhat of a perfectionist. Over a period of 3 months, he worked on a song until it was absolutely perfect in his mind. And honestly, I admired his discipline and focus to get there. Now, the second student, less detail-oriented and more focused on speed. So over the period of about 3 months as well, his songs weren't perfect, but he was happy with the results. And over that time, he created 8 songs. So a lot of us fall into the trap of this first student without us even realizing it. And although it's admirable to work on something until it's perfect, you're not going to learn as much as if you did more work at the beginning. With that said, how much work you need to do to finally get good, right? And when can you slow down to finally work on something until perfection? And is there a line there? So many questions. Well, what is good? From my personal experience, I felt like the songs and productions that I were making were finally good until I passed that about 100 song mark. So here are some guiding principles that you could focus on based on my personal experience. Change your mindset at the beginning to quantity over quality. And finish and complete the songs. Don't give up halfway at the beginning. When you're better and producing a lot, of course, you can give up songs like right away. You know you've been down that road before and you're going to save your time. But at the beginning, you kind of got to experience these roads and finish songs. Next is document your progress in a folder on your computer. Literally just keep track of the songs you're making so you can look back. It's super fun to look back on old songs. And then the next one is just to invest the time to learn and get feedback on your work. Feedback. So important to get better. Let's move on to the next piece of advice. And this one made me feel like a lot cooler, and I think it's going to do that for you too. I've been known to say that you don't need a lot of equipment when you first start. And this is true, but there will come a point where this becomes false. There will come a time in your journey where it's definitely important to upgrade your equipment to get better. So how do you know when that should be? Talk and learn from other music producers to see what they're using. To me, I did this in studio whenever I recorded my first 2 albums. At the time, I was using a Rode NT1A mic into a Focusrite Scarlett to record my vocals. But then when I went to the studio, I was using this nice Neumann TLM-103 into a UAD Apollo interface. Hearing just the raw audio back to back, I could tell the difference in sound quality, and it was a signal to me that I wanted and probably needed to upgrade my equipment at the time to get that sound. However, if you had the same experience, maybe let's say, and you can't hear the difference, then just save your money. Continue working with what you have. Of course, there is an argument to say that if you have the money, just go for it and get it. But for me personally, I prefer to work on my skills first and then reward myself after. So what could be some initial gear that you could consider investing in? Well, for home studio producers, you could consider upgrading your room treatment, your speakers or headphones, your microphone, your audio interface, an outboard channel strip that includes EQ or compression, or any musical instrument that you might or could record. The next piece of advice is just too easy to ignore in Logic, and if you're not using these tools, then honestly, you're just wasting a ton of time. The 3 tools that I would start using today are, number 1, save your favorite instruments as patches so you don't have to recreate them every time you want to use them in a session. I find this very, very valuable for drums. Number 2 is save the plugins that you use most often on your channel strips so you can easily recall them in later sessions. And a popular one for me that I do all the time is just my vocal channel strip. So every time I'm playing a vocal, I just load up that channel strips and all that plugins are there. So instantly the vocal sounds fresh and polished. Number 3, take both of these first 2 tips and save them in a project template that you can start with whenever you want to start a new session. Go above and beyond by adding markers and some different routing to reverb or delay, and set up a mastering bus to make things punchy and glued. And honestly though, it's just the tip of the iceberg though when it comes to plugin hacks and tools in Logic Pro. It's why you should watch this video here, and I'll show you much more and the ultimate Logic Pro plugin hacks that took me years to master. By the way, thanks for sticking around and watching this video. I hope to see you in the next one.